Hello. We are going to be going over our webinar today, which is the science behind warming up and cooling down. And ta-da! And here we are. It's one of those things that, one thing that I've noticed going into all these fitness conventions and even for me, especially recently being up in Massachusetts and New England, I find it to be really important to kind of stay on top of, stop that, we'll keep that right there. I need to stay on top of like my own fitness and my own well-being, especially days have been super short, and it's critical to be able to feel good about what I'm doing. And something, and I say this all the time, I probably say this in almost every webinar because I think it's truly important. Something happens when we start to turn our passion into a job, and then we start to think about, well, I need to be doing my own workout during the same time, and it becomes this rolling ball of chaos that starts to ensue. So it's really important for us to be able to, even go and see other teachers to see what they're doing in their classes, so that there's ways that you can start to cultivate a deeper, richer understanding. And I always say knowledge is power, and I want each and every one of you to be the smartest people in the world. And one of the things that's one of the biggest misconceptions, and something that I think always needs to be explored, is the science behind the warm-ups and the cool-downs. Because we think we add them in because we're like, oh, we know we need to do this, but why? And it's crazy because for far too often, our clients might show up to our workout and just kind of jump in with crazy exercises with absolutely no warm up. And luckily, I would say for our program, during many of the sections that we have, you can easily work them up to it, but it's good for us to know whys, like why do we have this warm up? Why do we have this cool down? What's the point of all of this? And for some people, they're completely pinched with time. They're trying to squeeze in a small workout into this crazy busy schedule. And so many people are like, I'll just skip the warm up. I don't need to do it, which can be some of the most important things that you are doing as a participant, but also as an instructor, is for us to know why we're doing this. So is a warm-up even really necessary? And what even constitutes a good warm-up? Those are two major things. And, in our manual, we don't highlight it so much because we get into the nuts and bolts of everything. But the warm-up is the start. Let's start it off right. What is the warm-up? And there you go. There's your answer. Don't skip out on it. Done. Webinar ended. No. The warm-up is a signal to the body that exercise is about to commence. So it's a form of both mental and physical preparation. It's also this trigger for your neuromuscular system, that the links between the nervous system and also the various muscle groups, they're going to be utilized shortly and in conjunction to each other. So it's helping to create those I would say like passages between those two to say, okay, ready, we're going to get going. And to me, what I've noticed is there's definitely been this lack of understanding with it, and for us to understand that this is something that it can't be skipped is like vital to all of us. Although many warm-ups, they'll talk about that warm-ups can prevent injury, and they do. And they'll talk about, obviously we don't want to put static stretches first because you need to get the heart rate to increase. You need to make sure that the muscles are warmed up and they're able to stretch out, because just like taffy, if you start to stretch out on cold muscles, you're gonna get into your body in a way where you'll start to stretch out tendons and ligaments, and those can't be stretched back or put back into that tightness that you need. And so that can create that can lose stability within joints. So these are some of the most common reasons. Those let me erase what I was just about to say. For many reasons, we skip over all of those. And whether we don't know the reason why we need to do it, that in itself is some of the biggest factors of why we need to do it. But it can also, the big thing to me is when we are able to connect the mind and body, and that's like the holistic part of FXP fitness, is connecting the mind and body, being present for where you are, understanding what's going on with your body. That's going to help your overall performance of what you're doing in your class, because you're bringing mindfulness into what you're doing. Of course, like the duration and intensity for the warm-ups are definitely going to vary depending upon what's going on in your class. If I have a class that's completely deconditioned, what I'm going to do for a warm-up versus what I do for some other people that are super athletic, it might change depending upon who's in my class. Also the circumstances, if I'm doing a lot of explaining of waist tubing first, like everything is going to come in as a factor for it. But we want to make sure that the internal temperature in the body becomes consistent with the muscle warmth. You want to make sure that you are increasing and getting, making sure that someone has a little bit of perspiration, because that's a clear indication of what's going on in their body. And you want to increase the cardiovascular activity and intensity going onto it. You want it to be a sloping hill going up versus a straight mountain going straight up to the top. So you want to ease them into it. So in many cases, the warm-up can be 5, even 10 minutes. And for many of us, we're like, 10 minutes, that's going to take up most of my, class if I have to do 10-minute warm-up, 10-minute cool down. But in many cases, especially with the people that we're working with, if your class is super young, they're 20-year-olds, then here, Connie, I'm going to mute you just because I think I hear you. Okay. So you want to make sure that depending upon who you're working with, the age group of people that you're working with, and the health of the people that you're working with, you really want to make sure that you're taking them through it. So, and we're going to get into our major reasons why we warm up. So enhanced performance, I'm going to go through all of these like step by step. So enhanced performance, a warm-up activity serves basically like 2 really big major purposes to enhance the performance and to prevent injury. And I'm going to go into a couple other ones that I think for people who are our age, for people that we work with, if they're 35 plus, around into that 65, dizziness is another big one. That's to me, that usually becomes my biggest one. But consequently, the warm-up is both a physical and mental thing, like I said. So like relaxed, sitting in your chair right now, and going through, reading what's on here, and just listening to the things that I'm saying. You're going to produce a pretty low, I would say, 15 to 20% of blood flow that's going out through your skeletal muscles. While most of the blood flow through the small blood vessels, our capillaries, are within, they're all within, and they're all going to be closed, because as we get warm, and as we open up, they start to open up as well, so that you get more rush of blood flow to go into the places that need it. But after about 10 to 12 minutes of total body exercise, the blood flow to the skeletal muscles starts to increase 70 to 75%. And all of those capillaries open so that they can reinforce the oxygen, they can reinforce blood going into those areas to help those muscles. So imagine if you're opening that much, we need to make sure we're doing it in a gradual manner for it. So along with more blood flow comes an increase to our muscle temperature, right? This is good because the hemoglobin that is in your blood releases oxygen more readily at higher temperatures. That's another huge reason why we need to increase our heart rate, increase the warmth within our body. So more blood that goes into the muscles, along with more oxygen available to the working muscles, means better performance. And it means that your body is ready to take on more strenuous movements and more fatiguing of those muscles. So the increase in temperature also contributes to a faster muscle contraction and also to relaxation. So it works both that squeezing, the tightening of the muscle, but also then afterwards the opening. So you're working both ends of the spectrum. And the nerve transmission and muscle metabolism is increased. So the muscles become more efficiently moving. It becomes a vehicle that is like well lubricated, and that in itself, check, we need to warm up, but it's all of those factors that go into it, which I think are like incredibly important to it. So for the next one that we have, which is the injury prevention for it, you know, scientific studies link warming up with injury prevention. It's really, really hard for them to administer something like that, because on one hand, if you think about it, if the muscles are tight, then you're also helping to protect the joints. You're also helping, like if you're doing, let's just say like lunges, it stops you from going too far, because if your muscles get soft, it helps to open up the flexibility, and then that can go beyond the muscle strength. So it's kind of the yin for the yang for that, where on one side we see the reasons why, on the other side it could also do the opposite for it. But you know, there's definitely been studies, and going back as far back as you can, where they talked about that they determined that injuring a muscle, if it hasn't gone through that warm up, then it requires more force on the muscle and more muscle length. So it becomes, and that's without having the warm up. So you need more force and you need more muscle length to get the same degree of intensity going on as you would without that warm up. So it's kind of two sides of the spectrum to pay attention to. For all of this, you know, for the injury prevention, it's more of, I think, being mindful with what's going on. You know, I did look up a lot of studies on this in order for me to do this. And so many of it, you could find one reason why it helps and one reason why it hurts. And there's a lot of different philosophies that come into it. But a lot of things for that injury prevention can seem a little bit on the gray side for it. It's more of that you're like lubricating the joints, and you're getting the joints warm, and you're getting the muscles around it warm. I think for the most part are on the plus side rather than that negative side of it. The mental preparation for it, which I think like we kind of hit upon that, is when you're getting yourself ready for exercise. For all of us, even for us as instructors, we might be like, oh, we've already done this every single time we do our class. We're always doing our Demi Plies. We're always doing our overhead reaches. Like, we're always doing the same things. And for us, we might be like, oh, this is boring. For other people, they're like, this is how I start my class. So it's like, you have to get over that part of it, because for exercising, this isn't just about us. This isn't just about us being like, okay, well, you know, this class is about me. I'm going to get my workout for it. There's this package that comes into it where people feel comfortable when they know what's going on. How many times have you gone to a class and you're like, oh, I know this exercise. So you can feel like you can push more into it. You can understand what's going on. You feel like you feel comfortable with it. Same thing happens if you have that like bow that wraps up your gift of your exercise format. Then people are able to tune into their body and to connect and set into that right away. And that to me, like if you're working with major athletes, it's of the utmost importance for you to be able to add in a warm up for them, because, you know, it's that type of mental preparation that we need to get through those hard parts of life. And guess what? People don't like working out, like plain and simple. Yes, you will get those, like those crazy people. I'm probably one of them where I'm like, yes, let's go do it. But like for the most part, every average person, you can find 1,000 different reasons why you should not work out. But the preparation of having people ease into something that they're doing is going to make them feel better about it. It gives them the chance to understand the mechanics of their body, especially for us in our program where we're saying all ages, all stages. Listen to what your body is saying to you. If you are not taking that time to ease people into it and to be able to endure some smaller moments where they're going to get that lactic acid going and they're going to feel it, if you don't give them that kind of baseline to get into it, then we're doing a huge disservice for them. And that physical performance later on is going to become incredibly limited for them. So it can be something that's really important for them. And of course, our cardiovascular preparation, getting the heart rate up, getting things moving and grooving, oh look, bam, for it is really important. One of the biggest things that I think for all of this is the dizziness. So for a lot of people, they come into class, and depending upon if they're deconditioned or they're conditioned and they're physically fit, it's important for us to be able to take that time to bring them up to a place where they're able to get their heart rate up. They're able to understand what's going on in their body. So that's the big picture of the warm-up. So the science behind it, you want hemoglobin, you want the oxygen, you want the increased temperature in the body. So can you warm it up? And Jessie, may I ask you, like, do you have a common thing? And if you don't want to answer, I totally understand because I'm putting you on the spot. Do you have a warm-up that you go to? Like, is there a go-to for yourself?
Yeah, I definitely do. I do some, waist hooping is a big part of our warm up in my classes, but mm-hmm. I always start with some nice, upward stretches, like the mountain into tree, and doing some nice side stretches. And we take it all the way, down and around as well. Do a lot of the kind of broadening through the chest with a little bit of tension on the hoop and relaxing, kind of working up those shoulders, but also finding that core balance as well, and bringing some focus to that, or just starting with more so awareness rather than actual engagement, but just creating that awareness through the midline, throughout the core. And then, so I usually do that for, I would say probably 3.5 to 4 minutes, as far as those general stretches go. And then we go into the waist hooping, where we spend a good amount of time on forward stance and side stance. And then before we really get into the more of the standing moves and such. Lovely.
I love that. So in total, it may be like 8 minutes. 8 to 10 to...
I would say probably about 10 minutes or so before we really get into, from there, I'm depending on my classes, I usually go into things like picking apples or speed skater, and I go back to waist hooping quite a bit. So, do one and then to waist hooping, to the other, to waist hooping, and then move on down and go into lunges or squats and arms and so on. But kind of stagger it in.
I love that. And so I think that's totally appropriate. I always tell people I use waist hooping as my way to warm people up, especially because it breaks that format of monkey see, monkey do, where we're doing all the exercises together. It gives people it gives me the chance to stop the class, to slow things down. And I love that. You can still do like the breathing and finding stretching, and then like feeling that and stretching. And when I mean stretching, I'm like, it's dynamic stretches, which it sounds like you're like totally up there for it, because you're not statically holding the muscle. You're allowing for space and for micro movements to move the body in a way that helps to release them. And then getting into waist hooping, or like even vice versa. I like hearing you say that, because I usually do hooping first. I like that. I like your balance, and being able to find that core connection first can be super important, especially in this day and age where we're like, go, 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 do crazy stuff. It can be one of the biggest services to our clients to just step back and be like, okay, let's just like target in on our body. We're doing this for pleasure. We're not doing this for punishment, but you're working people up in a gradual manner. For waist hooping. Now, because waist hooping is a low to no impact exercise, it can be used as the warm up specifically, because every time that hoop drops, as long as they're picking it up while they're protecting their body, they're helping to protect the lower back, they're opening up their hips, they're getting maybe a little squatting action in it. You're teaching them a functional movement anytime something drops. How do you pick it up safely? You're also giving them that chance, that mental preparedness to say, okay, if the hoop drops, it makes that clambering sound and it sounds like chaos is happening. No big deal. What success isn't the fact that the hoop goes around, for 20 minutes. Success is every time you drop that hoop and you pick it right back up. That's what success is. But on the other side of the whole spectrum, and like away from the lovey-dovey feeling it gives you, is that you will break the circuit format by stopping the class. Like if you've got their heart rate up really high and you're going, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, now stop hooping, stop moving, and I'm going to explain to you what waist hooping is. That breaks the whole flow of the class. That breaks the whole like excitement. That actually lowers their heart rate down to a place of maybe almost like resting, depending upon how well and how conditioned they are. That's going to stop the whole flow of everything that you're doing. So generally for that recommendation for warming up is to really begin with low intensity movement. So that's going to be waist hooping. That also gets you that chance to see what's going on with your class. So it might be something that for me, I can't not waist hoop. Can't. I love it. It's going to be in every single one of my classes. I can't stop it, won't stop it. But it gives me a chance that I can spot check people. I can give them every single rule before they like get all excited and just push it around and stop listening to what I'm saying. But you want that to be in a aerobic or zone 1 intensity, which is like you can talk, you can laugh, you feel like a little warm, but you feel really low on that spectrum where you're bringing them up. So it's just like a little bit of an increased heart rate, a little bit of warmth in the body, but you're keeping it at that base level at the very beginning. Gradually, obviously, as you increase intensity, you can do that throughout that whole warm-up period. And, for a lot of us, we don't, like an old car, like an old, wonderful car, we don't move as quickly as maybe that brand new edition that just drives off the lot. So, that 10, even to 12 minutes, maybe even a little bit more, might be something that's really great for your clients. That's another reason we want to make sure that they're working in a way that feels good for them. Obviously, you can include short segments, which I do myself, where I have them stop the hoop and switch in the opposite direction from side to side. So that can start to increase the intensity. And I might give like bursts of 30 to 60 seconds of some kind of more intense exercise within that main spectrum of them still being at that lower intensity level. So they might get these pops and bursts of stopping the hoop or high speed hooping, like increasing the core connection. As long as you have those moments of like bringing them right back down, because we want to keep it like that ebb and flow within the confines of this structure. So I think that that's great. I also think that when you warm up, there's one part, and in our manual, I feel like you know, we talk about Demi Plies, and then it doesn't really come in all that much unless you start to think about a Demi Plie as being some things that you might do in like water skier or bar burn, if you're like, I'm only doing a Demi Plie here. But Demi Plies to heel raises in first position, I think are a great way. So coming down, letting them sink down just a few inches, this sets them up for, I think, some really great things posturally. The first thing, you set them up for an external rotation of the hips. You're warming up major muscle groups. Same thing with on-body waist tubing. You're setting up major muscle groups. The bigger the muscle groups, you want to work from that larger context of you're working big muscles and then going to small finite muscles as the workout increases, because those big muscles are going to be the first ones to warm up because they're the major ones. Not that any ones are minor ones, you know what I mean. They're all major in our body, but in the science spectrum of it, you want to make sure that you're working those bigger muscle groups first. You could even do things like light lunges, where it's not a big lunge. A lot of our, like the water, not the water skier, excuse me, picking apples, if you go a little bit slower and count through the beats with it, those can definitely be worked into as some definite warm up exercises. Obviously, the deeper you get into it, the more intensity you build into it. If you kept it on one foot versus, you know, like even alternating from side to side, those are going to then make it more intense, and then you're going to build up more lactic acid. So it's kind of being on the softer side of many of the exercises is really going to help to create that warm up for it. So like I said, Demi Plies. One of my favorite things is we Demi Plie, we heel lift, so we go down for 2, we raise our heels for 2, sink the heels down, lift the arms up and down. So that goes perfectly to an 8 count where they're just raising arms up and down, which is one way to raise the heart rate too. It can be a little bit of a superficial way to raise it, but raising the heart rate, regardless of if it's just that you raise your hands up and that helps the blood starts to pour out of the hands, and then it helps to increase the heart rate, it's okay, because no matter what, it's still getting the heart to speed up, it's getting the body to warm up, and you're creating a small little, you know, sometimes in like yoga, we might say you want to build that fire. So it's a small little ember at the beginning that you can start to then fan the flames of as you increase in your workout. So you can have a lot of fun, especially with like with our reach for the stars. That can be a great thing. Jesse mentioned it. Jesse, you mentioned it. That's one that you, instead of though maybe not picking up the foot and you're just like having people stretch from side to side, they can have the arms above their head, reach from side to side. You can also do it for stability in the front, and just a different way to do another move, because sometimes you could take one move, break it up into half and do it in a different way, and people are going to be like, oh, that's a whole brand new move. So if you have the hoop in front of you and you're resting your hands on top of the hoop, you could raise one hand in the air and reach over to the side, inhale, bring it back to center, other arm comes up. And so you're doing the same exact motion, but with the hoop in a different place, and it's going to make it feel like something different. Even if you combine both of those movements together, it's no big deal. People can use a lot more stretching and fluidity in their body. And so that's hopefully what we're here to offer for them. So here it is. What do you do for a warm-up? So we asked Jessie her warm-up. I love it. You know, why not come onto our Facebook group and talk about what you do for a warm-up? So my first thing is hooping. And I talked about those Demi Plies. Overhead reach, which is those reach for the stars. I even have done some things that are not in our manual, but just slight rotations of side to side. I first start with them. The torso is not supposed to go more than 45 degrees in either direction. So I just start with a small little rotation of side to side, holding on to my hoop at 3 and 9. And then once I get a little bit more excited in that, then we start to pivot that back foot into it, and it leads for a hip opening. It also just helps to open up the glutes. It gets a little bit of a torso rotation, helps to improve circulation throughout your whole torso. So that's a great thing to kind of get into. If you put the hoop down, even such things as arm swings forward, arm swings back, not in our curriculum, but it's a great way to work up the girdle of the shoulder, especially because in our system, we have hands forward. In our zip it up, we have hands up or zip it up, hands up, we have hands forward and zip it. Some rotations and arm swings of going forwards and backwards can be a really great way to open up the back. It also does a minor little cat-cow position, which can help to release throughout the whole spine to give people a little bit more flexibility in their spine. We lose a ton of flexibility as we get older. Our S-curve starts to get manipulated. A lot of things can come into it. So if you're able to help to create some arm swings, that's gonna really open up the torso as well as the whole girdle of our shoulder. One big thing that many women specifically have issues with are impingements. And if an impingement is, basically, and I talk about this kind of a lot. If you imagine this is the top of your shoulder, and this is, we have our bone that connects into it. What happens right here is as the arm goes up, the muscles, because we stand like this, the bone presses up into our shoulder so that we push, and that's why a lot of people, they're like, when I reach my arms to the sides, it hurts. Once they move their arms up here, what happens to the space is it sinks down into it, creating space right here. So it can slide down into the sockets. That's why some people, they can reach their arm up, but if you have them find this kind of rotation, this movement, it really can hurt them. That's our deltoids that have a lot of pressure on it. So a lot of those arm swings can just help open up that position. Things like high knees, that's going to start to create a little bit of a impact on the body. I don't necessarily think impact is a terrible thing, but if you have any kind of like marching or anything like that, you have to take away that no impact from your class. You just want to think about that. Like bar is no impact, where you're standing at the bar, you're not really doing too much with marching or any kind of motion like that, or tap side to side. So you just want to change around the terminology of what you call your class, just as an overview, as an FYI. I personally do not call my class a low to no impact class. I don't even mention it personally. Because to me, I like to tap side to side. I like to march. I like to march with a zip it, where I'm bringing one knee up and I switch. So I personally like a lot of that kind of like a little bit of motion. I like a little bit of like hops if they can do it, but I always give modifications for everything. And light lunges, it's a great thing to do for warm up. And when you do light lunges, you could even do, and it would probably, you step back, you just want to make sure that front knee is over the ankle, and the step back is more like a kickstand that goes back behind you, and you just bring it forward. You can even do it with the hoop in front, and you just light lunge back, and you can alternate side to side. So you're working on the quads, you're working on the major muscle groups, glutes, and you're not adding too much exertion into that muscle. Bada bing. So any questions? Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Any questions with the warm-ups? And we understand from all the scientific terms from before, getting all that, the neuromuscular skeletal system and all that fun stuff. So cooling it down. Cool it down. So remember how I mentioned all that dizziness? Well, dizziness can happen when you get too fast I feel like I look like a slight angel right here with these like things shining down, my light's shining down, doesn't it kind of? Or it looks like I should be like, yeah, nanu. There'll be a test on all that later. So for cooling it down, preventing dizziness. Dizziness is the biggest thing that you need to worry about. Why? Does it even matter? So what happens when we go from high activity to no activity? The blood pressure starts to decrease. When the and then also on top of that, and I'll go into it, but it's also our fifth one, is that you'll get pooling of blood that gets into your lower extremities. I'll move that. Your lower extremities. I'll move that right over there. I'll move it up here. Perfect. So with that can lead to a lowering of our heart rate, and then you're going to have a lot of hoopers that are going to be on the ground, and we don't need that. So research states that performing a cool down series after the workout can help with the following. So the first things first, though, cooling down for 5 to 10 minutes. I can't tell you, and this is what like spurred it on for me, is that, again, going to those fitness conventions and going to my own classes where like I'm just going as a participant, many classes did not have any kind of cool downs, and I was downright annoyed and mad. And then I realized maybe we don't always put the significance on it, because what we do is we put the significance on working out and making sure that people get an effective workout and making sure that people are safe in the workout, meaning, you know, you're understanding the mechanics of the move, but maybe we're not totally explaining the importance of the cool down and the warm up, which are, you know, just as important. And so cooling down for 5 to 10 minutes with low intensity activity, like, you know, you could even, depending upon the class, slow waist tubing, getting down to do even a slow motion lunge, having them slowly march in place. Like by this time, towards the end of the workout, if you take everything and you just have them do some high knees where they're still working major muscle groups, but they're doing it over that like sloping motion as you go down the mountain, you're just allowing for them to like ride on the end of the roller coaster. That's always my favorite part, next to the beginning, but like that slow where you're like looping around and you're just like feeling how good you feel, and you have that like buzz of energy that's going through you. That's going to help the heart rate and the breathing to return to normal. And that's what we want, is to return to this resting level-ish. It's not going to ever be resting because you probably came off of a high intensity workout. So we want it to return gradually. And that really does help support and to deter any kind of fainting or dizziness. And a lot of people get dizzy. A lot of people have vertigo. A lot of people have inner stuff going on with them. But a lot of that fainting can result from that blood pooling in the large muscles. And that's usually in the legs specifically. That's the big thing, because the legs are down, and they're going to take up all, especially if you go from everything, they're taking up all of the blood, because it's going to go to those major organs or the major muscles first. And that's the major one right there. So when you stop doing that, that's when all the blood starts to pool there. The other thing that happens is that it stops, and I don't have it right here. I should have, this one is kind of cool too. So as you do that, it actually stops removing the waste products from your muscles, like things like lactic acid. If you just stop exercising, the body stops removing the lactic acid from your system. So, and that builds up during vigorous activity. It's most effectively removed, FYI, it's most effectively removed by gentle exercise rather than stopping suddenly. So, done. And we want to get rid of that lactic acid, and we want to get rid of all that waste product, because we don't need that in our system. We want our system to move in a seamless manner, we hope, So we don't want to be part of the issue. We want to be part of the solution for our clients. And for them to know this information is just as important, because to me, I'm like, you're not always going to work out with me. And if I can give you some information that when you go home and you try to work out on your own, you realize the importance of being able to, walk for the last 10 minutes nice and slowly after your workout. You understand why you need to do these things. And it also helps to prepare the muscles for the next exercise session. So, and many times ending with static stretches is going to be really important for people, especially because and static stretches, the 10 seconds that you hold a quad stretch, yes, it might feel great for that 10 seconds, but come to think of it, for you to be able to stretch out a muscle, more than 10 seconds is important. The same time that you hold someone in a plie, you make them pulse, you make them hold that motion so that they can really start to break those boundaries of what they think their body can do. The same thing is going to be applied to stretches. If they do not create a longer duration of stretches, then they're not going to be able to break through that boundary. So we're here to make them more flexible. It's going to be a short-term relief and not long-term solution to what's going on in their body. But that improving and static stretches at the end, that's going to improve their flexibility, and it makes for a great transition from exercise back to that steady state of rest. So I would say the overall goal for all of it is going to be the number 2, that reduce heart and breathing rates, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure their heart rate is back to normal. And I will flip to the next slide in a second, but I'm going to show you what you should do. And you should be doing this in almost every one of your classes, is going through and having people find their heart rate, being aware of what their heart rate is, and we'll go through what the different levels are for that. So these are I think the major ones. Gradually cooling down the body temperature. You never want them to be, super hot and flustered and walking out of the classroom. Yeah, we want them to feel that glow. We want to bring everything back to the state of almost how we found it, almost. And let me see if I just want to make sure I didn't miss out on anything from my notes. Yeah, no, I think that's good. Yeah, the dizziness is so big to me, because that's the blood vessels just expand. I wrote a whole other paragraph on it too. And I'm like, I think I hit home. You understand about that. We don't want any fainting hoopers. The one thing that people do say is that stretching at the end is going to help prevent long-term the post-workout muscle fatigue, or when you have that increased soreness, and not the one that happens you might get one that's a day after, and the stretching is going to help it helps to stretch out the muscles, but it doesn't necessarily help prevent soreness. So just to kind of let you know with that, a lot of us are like, oh, this is going to make you less sore. No, probably not. And the reason why is because if you worked out someone, you're tearing their muscles. That's what happens. And there's nothing wrong with that. It sounds scary. It sounds really scary. You're tearing muscles, little tears. And that helps to build up stronger muscles. So by stretching that, you're not then putting the muscle back together and making them less sore. You're just helping to then create length in the muscle and flexibility through the belly of the muscle, rather than fixing the muscle. So it's a big misconception that they're like, nope, you're gonna not be sore. No, still will be sore. If you do 150 squats, no amount of stretching is going to make that really ever go away. So that just takes more. You want to move the body the next day, get more blood flow going through it, because as we learned, you need more blood flow to go through that so that you can increase the flexibility, warm up the muscles so that all those capillaries open up and make that muscle happy, right? Biggest comment that you can give your students after they're sore, after they need a little bit of support, go walk. It sucks. Go do it. It's going to feel much better after a 15-minute walk. But at the end of the day, there's no scientific proof that at all that cooling down reduces that condition known as the delayed onset muscle soreness, unfortunately, which sucks. And that usually happens like that 24 to 48 hours after your class or after whatever strenuous activity that they've done. But but that's okay. You still need to do it for these 1,000 other reasons that we have. So no worries. There's another reason why we have it. Basically what studies have said is that for every hour of exercise, you need at least 10 minutes of cool down. So for us, if we are, and I would get that as close to an hour. If you're working someone out for 50 minutes, then you need at least 10 minutes. That's close enough to that like 5 to 10 minutes minimum is what you need for it. But that's a good rule of thumb. So if you did, a 2-hour workshop and you had people working out quite intensively, then you need to do 20 minutes of cool down. So it's a great rule of thumb for it. And I think one of the big tactics is to stretch to the same level of intensity as what you did for the warm-up. Of course, when people have softened muscles because they worked out really hard, they're going to be able to explore further and deeper into it. You want to keep them still at a safe level and I always kind of name things. I'm like, if you're at, I don't want you at a level 9, I want you at a level where that you feel like you're understanding the edge of where that uncomfortable is, but you're still able to breathe into it where you're not clenching the muscles. Many people go to the other extreme because they're like, I'm cooling down. No, you need to all of this goes back into like that mental state of calming people down as well, which can be just as important. You just don't want stretches and you don't want the cool down to be painful. You should feel the tension being released and the muscle being stretched, but you shouldn't feel like you're clenching on harder than you're releasing. So just kind of a rule of thumb for that. I'll put up my little thing in just one hot second for it. But just as an overview for that, just the goal of our cool down is to gradually bring that heart rate down back to that resting level. When the workout ends, keep that activity going, but just slow down the pace. Start with it slowing down and then reducing the pace every minute or two for whatever you're doing. Just make sure you get slower in tempo. That might include using something like Power Music has a great way, they just added it in, where you're able to slow down music mid-song and you're able to count it out, and so that you can slow things down on a big gigantic baseline, so it's really, or timeline, so it's really cool. So you're able to say, okay, I know towards the end of my workout we're going to slow down, so that can be also your cue to know that yes, we still need this amount of time. No, we might not have gotten to every exercise because we spent an extra 5 minutes hooping, but guess what, that's okay, because this is a safer thing for them to do. The cool down should last for at least 5 minutes, but you might go ahead longer, especially if you feel your heart rate or your clients feel their heart rate being elevated. And then of course, at the end of that, just make sure you're gently stretching the muscles because that's going to be the optimal time for doing it. Okay. So just to kind of wrap up. Yeah.
I have a quick question, Kat.
Yeah.
Regarding, just in, I guess, the correlation between the location of your head and your heart rate, at what point is it okay for the head to drop below the heart? Because I've kind of heard some mixed pieces on that. Like if you're doing maybe like a flat back as part of your cool down with the hoop out in front, head in line with the ears, but maybe allowing people to drop down a little bit too. Does the heart rate need to come back to a...
I would have it be lowered.
Okay.
I would, for any time where the head is below the heart, for many people, if you have someone who has like vertigo, or anyone who does have any kind of dizziness that comes in, you do want to make sure that the heart rate has been brought down. In yoga, you do transition between it. If you are going to hold it statically, you just want to make sure that their heart rate is down in general. A lot of times, like if in a yoga class, or, I'll use that because that's the biggest place where people do that like halfway lift, or they get that head below the heart. It's usually done in a quicker succession that mixes a movement to a breath many times. I'm not going to say that's every yoga class, because that would be impossible. So if you are doing it, I would make sure that obviously knees are bent, they're not stressing into the joints. And again, same rule applies. If they're slowing down their body, you want to make sure the heart rate is down for it. Yeah. You are welcome. You are welcome. And of course, it's going to be dependent upon every client. And, maybe 10 years down the road, you'll hear something different. You'll hear something different. But, I would just say that you want to make sure that, especially there, I do that stretch a lot, and I'll do it in between exercises, even when I know their heart rate is up, but I'll just make sure that people are a little bit more flat back, and I have them soften their knees because, and maybe I'm short, but you can still get a stretch through the back. If your knees are bent a lot, then that means your hips can hinge back, your hips can hinge, your glutes can press back, and you can bring yourself almost to a squatting position, so you don't have to worry about the head going below the heart, but you can still get the chest opening from it. Does that make sense? Cool.
Thank you. That's perfect.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so checking our heart rate, finding our pulse. So if you go to the jawline, you come down inside the neck, it's about 2 inches in from the ear. Of course, for each person, you're going to feel it slightly different, and you're going to be able to, you check the pulse there too. So that's one way to find it. This is going to be usually the strongest way, and you want to find it with your index finger and your middle finger. If you're going to check it on your wrist, you're going to come to, and you have to move your Fitbit around, but you're going to place the 2 fingers located between the bone and the tendon, right on the radial artery. So that's on the thumb side. If you go to that inside position, look down at your wrist, you can feel where that bone and the tendon are right there, and there's that little bit of opening. The only thing you do not want to do if you're doing it right here is press too far down, because you want to keep it like a light, easy pulse where you can feel that pushing up, but it's going to be located on the thumb side. What's the point of all this? Well, I'll tell you why. Here's the heart rate. No, go back. Here's our heart rate. See if I can move this over. Nope. Nuggets. Okay, well, okay, there. Okay, so you can, and this is one, you might see this in gyms and be like, what the heck are they talking about right here? Look, there's the lady, she's taking her pulse right here, she's taking her pulse right here, and so either on that neck or the wrist area. And as an instructor, I think this is really important for you to understand, and I do many times, I'll have people start off, what is your heart rate? Cool. Halfway through, especially after like a very physical exercise, I'll say, okay, let's check our heart rate. Cool. At the very end, one of the last things I do is check your heart rate. And we do it maybe 2 or 3 times in class. You want people to be around, and depends on what you're doing. If you are doing a high intensity interval class and people were like in it to win it, you might get them pushing up pretty high for that. But you do want to make sure that they are at that 55% or lower when they leave your class, and that no one is going to pass out when they walk out the door. So have them find their pulse and give them a second, because it's going to take everyone a second. Just be like, okay, find your pulse. And then you have to use a watch as the instructor, and 10 seconds. And then you say to them, is your heartbeat under 17? Is your heartbeat under X? So you want to make sure that the heart rate is in that safe range. They're able to talk and no one is feeling dizzy. And I think that it's important for us to know what our endurance level is, because as you get stronger, as you get healthier, the endurance level is going to get higher and higher, and it becomes more interesting in order for us to challenge our bodies. So I think it's a really important skill or a tool in our wheelhouse to bring out and to be able to give people information, because they have something tangible by counting out their own heart rate, and it gets them really aware of it. So that is our whole kit and caboodle for that's the whole kit and caboodle for our webinar for today. So talking about the warming up and cooling down and the science behind it, why it's important. Obviously keeping that heart rate going, but doing it in a safe manner is it's paramount for our clients. Plus, it's also great information for us to give to our clients so that when they're working out at home with their hoop or doing something else, they are aware of the feelings and sensations that they have for physical endurance, for mental endurance, and so that they can feel better inside and out. So any questions that you might have other than anything, any questions? No.
This is really good. Thank you so much, Kat.
You are so welcome. Well, if there's anything you think of, please let me know. If you want to, if you want to add in and maybe even start a discussion. Sometimes I feel like I post up a lot on FXP, so I step back a little and then I go forward. But if you want to discuss, like, we should start up conversations on like what our warm-ups are, what our cooldowns are, because I think that, you know, it can be important, and we can learn from each other. Why not use each other in a way that feels good, where we can link arms and just kind of find out what other people are doing, get our pulse, get our fingers on the pulse of what's going on with other instructors. So thank you so much for joining me on this Monday at 1:30 a.m. No, just kidding. And I'll try to figure out what's going on there. Thanks, Connie. Thank you. Have an awesome evening. And Jesse, I will see you this weekend.
Yay, I can't wait. I'll see you on Sunday, Kat.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Have a wonderful, have a great night.
Thank you, you too.
Okay.
Goodbye, Kat.
Hasta la spaghetti pasta.
Go to bed. Go to bed. Good night. I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.